Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. We have with us a very special human being. He's somebody who's really done everything within the real estate space. Not only did he produce at record kind of volume, very, very high volume in terms of transactions and GCI, he also ran a really tight ship in terms of profitability. He turned that into a coaching company, teaching people how to scale. And now he's one of the top rev share earners with EXP in the company, growing it very fast and very quickly. He is a senior partner of mine, the one and only Mr. Lars Hedenborg. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome. And I'll add to the intro. You know, you said I've done everything in the, I've also made every mistake you could possibly make, you know, So I think there are more lessons as we unpack the journey, you know, today. I think there's more lessons in the things I can help, you know, others that are trying to make the ascension to business ownership, the mistakes they can avoid along the way. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of the things, like, you know, now that I'm in proximity with you, that you've really helped me with, and I really appreciate, is just your kind of insight because you've kind of done it, been there, done it, and you can point things out along that journey. So I guess for those out there, those agents who kind of don't know who you are and don't know kind of the journey, if you could quickly walk through your kind of evolution in real estate from kind of individual agent doing units and selling real estate to kind of business owner, and then we'll discuss kind of the journey after that.
Yeah, awesome. So I got into real estate 3 months before the big shift hit my market, major metro market. June 2007 is when our inventory shot straight through the roof, right? You know, as the Great Recession was hitting. You know, if you were in real estate at that time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was just a solo agent. My first 10 months in the business, I sold 27 homes instantly, evenings and weekends. I was married in 2006, you know. Anders, who now is just started to drive, was just born when I was getting into real estate. So my wife has pictures of me, like, you know, on the phone, feeding him a bottle and like totally not present as a dad. So my motivation for figuring this industry out, you know, making a ton of money, but not giving away my entire life in the process was really, I was instantly like out of bounds on the hours I was working. And even when I was with, you know, my new bride and my son, and then a couple miscarriages, and then we had our second child in April 2010. But I did 27 sides, then 44 sides in my first full year, then 58, 118, 178, and then 248 in 2012. And that year I sold one of those homes on a very profitable model. You know, a lot of guys and girls in this industry. I think the girls actually do better than the guys. You know, so I'll just say a lot of guys, literally, they're all about the top line numbers, and there's not a whole lot of profit at the end of the day. So we went to 312 in 2013 and then 453 in 2014. That year I worked like 42 days, you know, and I made almost $1 million in that business. And I launched Real Estate B School the year before because the journey was really freaking hard. It was hard to figure out like what pieces, you know, what systems could I build so I could hand off certain pieces of the transaction that didn't really require me being involved in it. And that sort of with the backdrop of what do I even like to do? I'm not naturally outgoing. I'm super introverted. I'm not like a natural salesperson. I put myself into those situations because I knew there was a big opportunity to build a legitimate business that served buyers and sellers at a high level. So the game, and then we can kind of unpack it, but the game that I played was just a different game. You know, I didn't want to make $1 gazillion a year. I just wanted to make $1 million a year. I'm like, if I could do that, that would be awesome. But I wanted to work 1,000 hours to do it, which is essentially do the math on 1,000 hours divided by 50 weeks or so. And it's like 20 hours a week, you know? So not that I did it perfectly, you know, some years I hit it, some years I didn't hit it. Most years I'm not hitting, you know, just the 1,000 hours, including like right now, as hard as I'm working. But it's always been this vision to make as much money as possible in as little time as possible so that I can have an impact in the areas of life that matter a heck of a lot more than selling the next home. And so, so you tell me where you want to take it, but that's kind of been the journey.
It very much so flies in the face of this like hustle culture that I think as a society, you know, we, you know, kind of buy into, and particularly within the real estate space, because there's a lot of kind of, influence within the space from people that have been influencing it, that have kind of preached this idea of hustle culture. And your mindset was more like, okay, how can I do the most doing the least amount? And I'm aware that in certain environments, they would poo-poo that or say it's stupid and dumb. And you're like, that's cool. Like, I want to make these investments in other areas in life. So did that come from more, because I know you have a background like an MBA in business. Did it come from that, like kind of building businesses or thinking like a business owner right out of the gate? Or did it come from more, you started to facilitate real estate transactions and you made a personal decision as far as what you value most, like, hey, this is unacceptable to me that traditional success in real estate is 70 hours a week?
I think it came from, a very chaotic and jacked up childhood where I saw, my mom and dad start a business. They were both hairdressers. My mom divorced my dad when I was 4. I understand alcoholism is an addiction, yet I think he went to drinking because the pressure of showing up in the home and having this failing business. 33 years he was in business and he had nothing to show for it at the end of that business journey. He was the ultimate E-myth, entrepreneurial myth. And so I think that was the backdrop. I refused to fail as a husband and a father. So that was like, I've got to figure this out. And at the same time, I was like majorly motivated to make a ton of money because I didn't have any as a kid. So this unnatural drive to make money and a healthy drive to be a good husband and father, I think those two things collided, and we get paid a ridiculous amount of money to do what we do for the most part. In 2007, I helped a father and son buy a home that they identified. It was in their neighborhood. I showed it to them, and it was a $620,000 home paid out 3%. I made $18,000 for way less than 10 hours worth of work. And I'm like, part of me is like, there's no way this could last. This is like, it felt like I was robbing somebody. And of course they're not all that easy. So, don't go up in arms about me saying that, it's easy being a real estate agent, because it's definitely not. But it sort of showed me that there could be a lot of margin in these transactions if you build the system the right way. So, but to answer your question specifically, it was, I wanted to make a lot of money. So I figured that out. But then I wanted to have freedom. So sometimes in real estate, you make the money, but you have no freedom. You have agents they're working every vacation. They're working every evening. They're working every weekend. So I wanted the money. I wanted the freedom. And then you get the freedom, and then then you want impact. So I feel lucky enough to be, I'll be 50 next year. To be at the point where I figured out some of the things. I made a lot of mistakes pretty quickly. I think I'm young to have figured out some things. So I think if you're not where you want to be financially, or you're not succeeding in an area of life that's important to you, you have to figure out one or the other. Like, what's going to motivate you? What's going to be the carrot? And then potentially, what's the thing you can think of to do the thing you don't want to do? And, so I use that same experience watching my dad go through a 5-year, essentially he had a stroke in 2009. He died in 2014. I would think of all of the experience, sort of watching him die slowly, essentially, when I didn't want to work out. I'm like, you better get off of your ass and work out right now so you don't do that to your family. So anyway, I hope there's something in there for somebody that might be struggling, where maybe you're just sort of a little lost on how to connect the pieces. The industry is not hard. It's not hard to be successful. It's actually quite simple. You just gotta do the work.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate your authenticity. I really do. And your straightforwardness. I know that that's what will resonate with people, And what comes up for me is like this idea, like people can teach you 2 ways of doing, like you can learn in 2 separate ways. One is how to do something. The second is how not to do something. And they're equally as powerful. Like I tell people regularly, like it's unfortunate that people who really screw things up don't do seminars. Like that'd be awesome. Like imagine if there was a guy who's like, hey, I totally screwed up my marriage. Like I'd be in the front row, like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. Right. Or like I totally screwed up my finances. Like, okay. Right. it's interesting that you got that from that experience, and that was my experience as well. Yeah, like my father's still living, and I watch him similarly. You know, there's very little leverage in his life, and increasingly his life is getting more like just hard, right? Because he doesn't have that leverage. So it's this really powerful kind of driving force to create more of it. And you know, I always tell people, like, if you're stuck, you're usually one relationship away. Like one individual way that can give you a different mindset, a different way of thinking, a different kind of skill. And, you know, and our proximity together, like, you've really been helping me with thinking. Because I very much so subscribe to that, like, hustle hard. Like, you know, I did 100 plus deals a year for like 12 years in a row, 200 deals a year twice with just me and like 2 assistants and like a couple buyer's agents, listing 150 plus homes a year. And I took pride in kind of being the type of person that could do that day in and day out. And a lot of my identity was kind of tied into it. And you've really been kind of not only putting kind of software, which would be like books and ways of thinking, but also challenging me in a lot of ways to start to unwind that. So how, being that that's so pervasive, right? That hustle kind of mindset and kind of culture in our industry, like, how does someone go about really starting to unwind that and think about leverage, think about the things that we're talking about, as far as, like, you know, I'm aware in this mastermind group that I run, I ask them, like, what do you think is directly correlated with longevity? And they would tell me things like money, and they would tell me things like you know, health. And what was so interesting is Harvard did a longitudinal study for 75 years where they looked at the same people over and over and over again, looked at medical records, interviewed everybody. And the thing that was directly correlated with longevity was the quality of the relationships that they had in their life, which was super interesting. It wasn't status. It wasn't like, you know, their position. It wasn't their title. It was that. So I guess talk a little bit about that, because I'm aware, like, you're very skilled at doing that.
You ever see in the horse races, you know, the horses have like those blinders over
Sure.
their eyes.
Yeah.
Any idea why they're there?
It's so that way they don't get kind of distracted, and they keep running in one direction.
Distracted. Yeah, so they can run their race, and so they don't get, you know, spooked out. I guess they get freaked out if they can see like what's going on around them or whatever. I think more people, but let's talk about real estate agents, just need to run their race. Like, just decide, be honest with yourself about where you are, where you want to go, you know, a 3-year vision or 1-year plan, chunk it down 90 days at a time, weekly and then daily, and then make good decisions every day. But run your own race, right? You know, I think it was Tony Robbins and probably others that say, you know, we overestimate what we could do in a year, but we underestimate what we could do in 10 years or 5 years or 7 years. You know, so we make these grand gestures like, you know, next year I'm going to lose 50 pounds, and then you don't lose 50 pounds, you know, because it's this grand gesture, and you're not changing who you are. You're just, you know, you're just deciding you're going to push for 90 days and whatever happens. But after the 90 days, you sort of go back to your old ways. So I think it's the same in business where, you know, if you decide today, let's say you're selling 20 homes a year, you decide today that you want to sell 100 homes in 2025. And you want to work less than 40 hours a week, no evenings or weekends. You're going to do 50 listings. You're going to have 2 agents that do 25 transactions each. You're going to have a great local licensed admin and maybe 1 VA. You could totally do it, right? But you will trip yourself up if you keep getting on a webinar, or you're getting into this system, or you're changing CRMs, or you're constantly distracted by all the stuff we're bombarded with. Right? Or you're chasing lead sources that will never, you know, give you any financial freedom whatsoever. They're just not built on an economic model that's sustainable. So I think it's just running your own race. And for someone that's figured out the money, you know, and they've succeeded at a high level in real estate, you know, you've got to start to figure out, like, what are you missing out on, and what regrets are you going to have if you keep running at the pace that you're running at, you know, and that's just not. And we've had conversations before, like really honest conversations, you know, you're not going to be measured. Nobody is going to measure you by the number of homes you sold.
Yeah.
But I promise your kids are going to measure you when they're in therapy, when they're 30, by like, oh, my dad always chose the listing appointment over me, or whatever crap is going to come out, from our kids. I know I'm jacking my kids up too, so there's no judgment in any of it.
Yeah.
But just think about how you want to be remembered. It's a pretty morbid exercise, but I have a life plan where I have essentially, this is going to sound so weird. I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but I have in my mind what I think the most important individual people or groups of people that are important to me today will say about me at my funeral. Really sort of a weird thing to even contemplate, but I want my wife to be able to think this or say this, my kids individually, what they would say, about me, the folks I served at EXP or Real Estate B School, or my men's group, my C12 brothers. And so it's just deciding how you want things to turn out and then getting to work against that. And then just really, this is the last point I'll sort of make, and then we can maybe cover something else. But I had a guy ask me one time, this was on, like, we do a weekly group call, and it was just like open Q&A or whatever. And he made the comment like, how do you stay so focused when there's so much going on in the world? And I haven't been perfect. I mean, last year's been a little bit of a crap show. I recently just removed a TV from a room that I couldn't get, it got a little bad. So I'm not, oblivious, or I definitely fall into the trap. But instantly I said to him, what I keyed into in that question was, he said, the world. Like, how do you get so much done or stay so on point when there's so much going on in the world? And instantly I thought about, like, your world versus the world. Like, there's just stuff going on in the world which we can't impact. We're going to get all stressed out about. It has nothing to do with our marriage, our kids, our financial situation. The next year is going to be the best year in real estate ever, I believe. Because if you just concentrate on your world, your database, your lead sources, the activities, the you versus you in every day, you will just crush it, because all the agents are in the world. They're getting freaked out. We did a market update today, and we dissected the headlines right now about the real estate market versus the reality. So the headline is like 400% increase in foreclosures. That's the headline. But foreclosures went from, let me see if I can remember the number. It was like 200,000 last year. No, it was like 20,000 to 80,000. But when you look at the 80,000 and you look in the last 20 years, it's like 10% of what it has been historically. In a strong market, there's like 700,000 foreclosures a year. And we're at 88,000. The headline is bleeding, and it's just clickbait. Another headline was homeowners lose 1.5 trillion of equity. So that's the headline. And then we looked at the reality. We looked at the graph, and the graph shows us that, equity was just inflated for 2 or 3 years. And it's actually where it is now is massively ahead of where it's ever been, if you sort of take out the massive infusion of capital and all the printed money and whatnot. And so agents are going to get in their head. They're going to read the headlines. They're going to be fearful, uncertain, doubtful. The FUD is going to hit the fan. And I think it's going to get the best of many agents, but you get to decide, what you're going to do next year.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Having built my business in 2007, 8, 9, during like an actual financial, this is just like a, kind of pullback, but like an actual financial calamity. I know with certainty, because I built 25% year over year, that regardless of what was happening externally, we did no short sales, no REOs. We still, through mindset skills and a proper plan and staying focused, like you're saying, with blinders on, we were able to accomplish what seemed to be things that were unaccomplishable. And what I was taking notes, because you are one of the most mission-driven, kind of purpose-driven, impact-driven people that I know. And you keep bringing that to my attention. You keep like putting in front of me like, hey, impact, hey, purpose, hey, mission, right? And I'm curious because I know you did the transition where you were doing the real estate thing, you scaled out of it. Then you made the decision like, okay, well, I can increase my impact by teaching more people how to do this because I want them to have, more kind of time with the things that matter and yet still make meaningful amounts of income, which this business allows us to do. And then, not that long ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, I think it is, you made the decision to kind of partner with EXP. So talk a little bit about that transition and how it fits into mission, purpose, and impact.
Yeah. So, I mean, EXP gives us the opportunity just to present a level of community collaboration and freedom that I don't think the industry has seen. So I said no to EXP for twice as many years as I've been in it. So I was like, that's a squirrel. It's a distraction, whatever limiting belief I had around, and it was simply, a better version of the 7 levels of profit share that Gary came up with. But I just had some limiting beliefs around it. But once I saw it and I'm like, holy cow, I can, it took me X number of years to get to the point where I've impacted, X number of agents through Real Estate B School and the ripple effects of that. What if this could give me the ability to impact like thousands of agents, and so it's been 2 years and like 3 months and, 1,500 agents, have joined. And I think I've brought on like 45, and they've just invited their friends in and they've invited their friends in. And, I'm able to offer, just more value to more people, and so there are folks, that are listening to this and not that I get criticized, but I do think I talk above sometimes where some agents are. So I want to mention one thing. So when I talk about the world, your impact right now, if you're listening and you're not where you want to be financially, the thing you need to focus on is like, what can you do today, this week, this month? Where are you not being true to yourself? Are you really, laser focused with your time? And I promise if you just stack day after day, week after week, doing the things that turn into sales, and really being accountable to yourself, that's going to change your world, and that's going to change, your family's life forever. So anyway, I don't know how that fits into where my mind was, but I wanted to make sure I covered that because some agents are like doing 50,000 GCI and you have it in you to get to 250,000 GCI. If you could do 50, you could do 250. If you do 250, you can do 1 million. There's things you need to tweak along the way, but yeah, I just think as there's so much distraction, with social and Netflix and news and all of it, I think people are falling away from even like a quarter of the potential that people could ultimately live into and lean into, because they're just not focusing on the right things long enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because I heard somebody say something recently where he was like, yeah, I think the reason why because people want outsized outcomes. They want the 1%, they want the $1 million, they want the outsized outcome. And he said, I think the reason why people don't produce outsized outcomes is because they dramatically underestimate the volume of activity and the length of time you will have to put out that volume of activity in order to produce the outsized outcome. And I think that's very, very accurate and true. And that's what I hear you saying. And what I wrote down is, as you're talking about all of these distractions, all of these kind of applications, whether they be social, whether they be entertainment, they're all trying to hijack your attention. And the more that they hijack your attention, the more money they make. And they make their products very addicting. Like, it's interesting because we have this conversation in our house, the kids with the screens, but then they're like, Dad, you're on the screen. I'm like, yeah, it's equally as addicting for me. Like, it works on children just like it works on adults, right? So, but by hijacking the attention, you're hijacking like this supercomputer that we have. So here's what's true for me, man. Like, I'm super appreciative of the platform of EXP and that it provides me and you to be in proximity to one another. And, I have benefited greatly from that proximity in terms of changes in thinking and like direction. And I know of no other platform that creates an environment so conducive for collaboration than this one. Like I went from someone who, like participated in real estate B school to now we speak on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Like, and how fast that happened and how quick that, could take place because the platform promotes collaboration at such a high level. So again, brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. I think a lot of people are going to get value from this. If people want to connect with you, or if they want to like reach out to you or anything that you're doing, what would be the best place for them to check you out?
I would say connect with you.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on the last comment, there are still folks that hear EXP and they've just had a bad experience, a weird experience with an agent approaching them in the wrong way. So my call to action is like, reach out to Aaron and talk to him about what it could look like and how it could impact your business and your life at a level that you couldn't possibly imagine. But then for me, I think, I don't really have a call to action. I mean, the podcast, no, actually go into my Facebook group,
Okay.
Real Estate Business Builders. Just jump in there. I'll give you a free copy of my book. And I do a weekly free training in there. It's really good weekly free training. It always has like a tool that I give away for free. So Real Estate Business Builders, I would say that's the only thing I would offer up.
Awesome, brother. Well, again, I appreciate you greatly. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. And I look forward to reconnecting soon.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. We have with us the real estate millionaire maker,